The dust on Juliette Winters's apron told the story of another long day at the boarding house. But it was the sound of boots on her porch that made her blood run cold in a way the September heat of San Diego, California, never could. She knew those footsteps, had heard them in her dreams and nightmares for 5 long years, and when she opened the door with flour still coating her fingers, she found Cole Yates on his knees in her doorway, hat clutched against his chest, eyes the color of a stormy sea looking up at her with more pain than any man should carry. "Juliette," he said, and his voice cracked like dried leather. "I know I got no right to be here. I know what I did, but I'm asking you to hear me out before you slam this door in my face because I deserve that and a whole lot worse." Her hand gripped the doorframe so tight her knuckles went white. The last time she had seen Cole Yates, it was 1873, and he had been riding out of San Diego with her reputation in tatters, and her heart shattered into so many pieces she thought she would never breathe right again. He had promised her everything under the stars that lined the California coast, had whispered words of love and forever, while they watched the sun set over the Pacific, had held her hand and spoken of marriage and a future. Then Marcus Fleming, the banker's son, had offered Cole $500 to leave town and never come back, and Cole had taken it without a second glance at her. "You've got 30 seconds, Juliette said, her voice steady despite the way her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Then I'm getting my father's shotgun." Cole stayed on his knees, and she could see now that he looked different. Older, harder, with lines around his eyes that spoke of sun and sorrow. There was a scar along his jaw that had not been there before, and his hands, which had once been rough but clean from working at the livery stable, were calloused in new ways that suggested harder labor. "I spent your trust," he said bluntly. "Every penny of that blood money. I spent it on whiskey and cards and trying to forget what I'd done. Took me 2 years to hit rock bottom in some mining camp in Nevada, working for scraps and sleeping in the dirt. Took me another year to earn enough to start paying back what I owed. Not the money, Juliette. The debt to you, to your heart, to everything we should have had. I've spent the last 2 years working ranches from Nevada to Arizona, saving every cent, living on nothing, trying to become a man who might someday deserve to ask your forgiveness." Juliette felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she had cried all her tears for Cole Yates years ago. After he left, Marcus Fleming had spread rumors that she had been too free with her affections, that she was not the respectable girl everyone thought. The whispers had followed her for months until her mother had taken sick, and then people had bigger concerns than gossip. Her mother had died that winter, and her father had followed 6 months later, leaving Juliette with nothing but the old house and a determination to turn it into something that could support her. "You think 5 years of hard work makes up for what you did?" she asked. "You think saving money changes the fact that you took money to leave me? That you valued $500 more than you valued me?" "No," Cole said simply. "Nothing makes up for it. Nothing ever will. But I'm not here asking you to forgive me, Juliette. I'm here asking you to let me stay in San Diego and prove to you, day by day, that I'm not that coward anymore. I'm here asking for the chance to show you that I've changed, even if you never want to speak to me again. I need you to know that leaving you was the worst mistake of my life, and I've paid for it every single day since." "Get up," Juliette said, and her voice was cold. "Get off your knees and get off my property. You want to stay in San Diego, that's your choice. But don't you dare come to my door again. Don't you dare speak to me on the street. You made your choice 5 years ago, Cole Yates, and I've made mine now." She watched something die in his eyes, but he nodded and rose to his feet. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe she had just tried to make him smaller in her memories. He settled his hat back on his head, and she could see his hands trembling slightly. "I understand," he said. "But you should know something, Juliette. I never spent a cent of that money on myself. I gave it all to the church in your mother's name, every last dollar, before I left town. I know that doesn't change what I did, but I need you to know I didn't profit from my betrayal. I just ran, because I was a coward who thought he wasn't good enough for you, and when Marcus Fleming offered me a way out, I took it like the fool I was." He turned and walked down the steps, and Juliette closed the door before she could watch him leave again. She leaned against the wood, her breath coming in short gasps, and tried to understand what he had just said. The church had received an anonymous donation the week after Cole left, a donation that had paid for her mother's medicine during those final months. Father Rodriguez had never revealed the donor, but Juliette had assumed it was one of the wealthy families in town. She pressed her hands to her face and tried to think. The boarding house needed work, needed guests, needed her attention. She had built a life here from nothing, had earned back her reputation through sheer stubborn determination and impeccable behavior. Mrs. Sarah Chen, the widow who ran the general store, had been the first to give her a chance, hiring her to help with inventory and treating her with respect when others still whispered. Thomas Grant, who owned the largest ranch outside town, had recommended her boarding house to travelers, and slowly, painfully, Juliette had clawed her way back to respectability. She could not let Cole Yates destroy that again. She would not let him back into her heart, no matter what he said about change and redemption. But that night, lying in her bed in the small room at the back of the house, Juliette could not stop thinking about the way he had looked on his knees in her doorway, or the way his voice had broken when he said her name. The next morning, she heard from Mrs. Chen that Cole had taken a job at the Collins Ranch, working as a horsebreaker for room and board and minimal pay. The Collins Ranch was 10 miles outside town, far enough that Juliette would not have to see him unless he came into San Diego, and she told herself she was grateful for the distance. 3 weeks passed before she saw him again. She was at the general store buying supplies for the boarding house when Cole walked in with Daniel Collins, the ranch owner's son. Cole saw her immediately, and she watched him physically check himself, staying by the door while Daniel conducted his business. He did not approach her, did not speak to her, just stood there with his hat in his hands and his eyes on the floor, giving her the space she had demanded. "Miss Winters," Daniel said, tipping his hat to her as she paid for her goods. "Father wanted me to ask if you might have room for some ranch hands next month. We've got a crew coming in from Texas to help with the roundup, and they'll need lodging in town." "I have 3 rooms available," Juliette said, keeping her voice professional. "I can accommodate up to 6 men, provided they are respectful and sober." "That's fine terms," Daniel said. He was a pleasant young man, close to her own age of 24, with an easy smile. "Cole here says your place is the best in San Diego, says your cooking is better than anything he remembers from before." Juliette's eyes flicked to Cole despite herself, and she saw color rise in his face. "Mr. Yates and I knew each other some years ago," she said carefully. "But I assure you, I run a respectable establishment. Your men will be well cared for." "Never doubted it," Daniel said cheerfully. "Cole's been a blessing to the ranch, Miss Winters. My father says he's the best hand with difficult horses we've ever had. Got a gift for gentling them without breaking their spirit." Cole shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing Daniel would stop talking, and Juliette felt a perverse satisfaction in his discomfort. Let him squirm. Let him feel a fraction of what she had felt. "I'm glad Mr. Yates has found suitable employment," she said coolly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to attend to." She left the store with her head high, but she could feel Cole's eyes on her back the entire way. That night, she lay awake and wondered what it meant that he had spoken well of her, that he had recommended her boarding house to his employer. Was it guilt, penance, or something else? The ranch hands arrived in October, 6 weathered men from Texas who were polite and paid on time. Juliette fed them breakfast and dinner, kept their rooms clean, and maintained the professional distance she had perfected over the years. Cole did not come with them, staying at the ranch, and she told herself she was relieved. Then one evening, as she was closing up the kitchen after dinner, she heard a commotion in the street. She went to the window and saw Cole fighting 3 men outside the saloon, defending himself against what looked like a coordinated attack. One of the men was Marcus Fleming, who had never quite forgiven Juliette for refusing his advances after Cole left, and the other 2 were ranch hands from the Stedman place, known troublemakers. Juliette's first instinct was to look away, to let Cole handle his own problems. But then she saw Marcus pull a knife, and something in her chest twisted. She grabbed her father's old rifle from above the door and fired a shot into the air, the sound cracking through the evening like thunder. "That's enough," she shouted, working the lever action to chamber another round. "Marcus Fleming, you put that knife away, or the next shot won't be a warning." The street went silent. Men poured out of the saloon, and Sheriff Tom Morrison came running from his office down the street. Cole was bleeding from a cut above his eye, and his knuckles were raw, but he was standing. Marcus and his companions backed away, hands raised. "She's gone mad," Marcus said, but there was fear in his eyes. "We were just having a discussion with Yates here." "A discussion that required 3 men and a knife?" Juliette asked. "Sheriff Morrison, I witnessed Marcus Fleming pull a weapon on an unarmed man. I believe that constitutes assault." The sheriff looked between Marcus and Cole, his expression weary. Tom Morrison was a fair man, but he was also practical, and Marcus's father had money and influence. "That true, Yates?" the sheriff asked. "I can handle my own problems, Sheriff," Cole said quietly. "No need for Miss Winters to involve herself." "I asked you a question," Morrison said, his voice hard. Cole hesitated, then nodded. "Marcus took exception to something I said. Things got heated." His friends joined in, and then he pulled the blade. "What did you say?" Morrison asked. "I told him to stop spreading lies about Miss Winters," Cole said. "Told him if I heard him say one more word against her reputation, I'd make him eat every tooth in his mouth." The street went very quiet. Juliette felt her face flush, felt every eye turn to her. She lowered the rifle slowly, suddenly aware of what Cole had just admitted in front of half the town. "Is that so?" Morrison said. "Marcus, you've been talking out of turn again." "I don't know what he's talking about," Marcus said, but his face was red. "Everyone knows that Juliette Winters was fast with this cowboy 5 years back. I'm just stating facts." "You're stating lies," Cole said, his voice dangerous. "Juliette was nothing but proper, and you know it. You paid me to leave because you wanted her for yourself, and when she wouldn't have you tried to ruin her. I was a coward for taking your money and running, but I'm not running anymore, and I'm not letting you destroy her name while I'm standing here breathing." The crowd murmured, and Juliette saw understanding dawn on several faces. Mrs. Chen put a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide. Thomas Grant, who had been standing outside the saloon, looked at Marcus with disgust. "You paid him to leave?" Morrison asked Marcus, his voice cold. "That's a lie," Marcus said, but he was backing toward his horse. "You take the word of a drifter over mine." "I'm taking the word of Miss Winters, who just risked her reputation again to stop you from stabbing a man," Morrison said. "And I'm remembering that your father made a substantial anonymous donation to the church about 5 years back, right after Yates here left town. Interesting timing. Marcus mounted his horse and rode off without another word, his companions following. The crowd began to disperse, talking among themselves, and Juliette knew that by morning the whole town would know the truth. She set the rifle down carefully and found her hands were shaking. "Juliette," Cole said, climbing the steps to her porch. Blood was running down his face and he looked exhausted. "Thank you, you didn't have to do that." "I wasn't going to stand by and watch murder in the street," she said sharply. "Don't read anything more into it." "I won't," he said, "but I need you to understand something. I wasn't defending your honor to win you back. I was doing it because it's the truth, and because I owe you that much. I owe you everything, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to pay that debt, even if you never forgive me." "You're bleeding," Juliette said, because it was easier than addressing what he had just said. "Come inside. I'll clean that cut before it gets infected." She saw surprise flash across his face, but he followed her into the boarding house. The Texas ranch hands were in the dining room, and they looked up with interest as Cole entered. Juliette ignored them and led Cole to the kitchen, where she kept her medical supplies. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair. She pumped water into a basin and gathered clean cloth, then turned to face him. In the lamplight, she could see the full extent of the damage. His eye was swelling, the cut above it deep enough to need attention, and his lip was split. "This is going to hurt." "I've had worse," Cole said, but he winced when she began cleaning the wound. They sat in silence while Juliette worked, her fingers gentle despite her anger. She had learned field medicine from her mother, who had tended to injured ranch hands and travelers before her death, and her hands remembered the work even as her mind spun with everything that had happened. "Why did you really come back?" she asked finally, threading a needle. "And don't give me that speech about redemption. I want the truth." Cole was quiet for a long moment, holding still as she began stitching the cut. "Because I never stopped loving you," he said. "Because every woman I met for 5 years I compared to you and found them wanting. Because I woke up every morning hating myself for what I'd done, and I realized that I could spend the rest of my life running, or I could come back and face what I'd destroyed. Even if you hate me forever, Juliette, at least I'd be in the same town as you, breathing the same air, walking the same streets. At least I'd know you were alive and well, even if I could never be part of your life again." Juliette's hand stilled. She tied off the stitch and set the needle down, then stepped back. "You don't get to say things like that," she said, and her voice was shaking. "You don't get to come back here and tell me you love me after what you did. Love doesn't run away. Love doesn't take money to abandon someone. Love doesn't leave me alone to face the gossip and the shame." "I know," Cole said. "You're right. What I did wasn't love. It was cowardice and self-doubt and stupidity. But what I feel now, what I've felt every day since I left, that's love. The kind that aches and burns and won't let me rest. The kind that made me work myself to the bone just for the chance to see your face again, even if it was filled with hate." "I don't hate you," Juliette said, and realized it was true. "I hate what you did. I hate that I spent 2 years thinking I wasn't good enough, that somehow I had driven you away. I hate that I lost my parents while my heart was broken, and I had to grieve alone because the man who should have been by my side was gone. But I don't hate you, Cole. I just don't know if I can trust you again." "I'm not asking you to," Cole said. "I'm asking for the chance to earn that trust one day at a time. Let me prove to you that I'm not the same man who ran. Let me show you that I'm someone worth knowing, even if we never go back to what we were." Juliette looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. She saw the man he had become, hardened by labor and regret, but also gentled by suffering and self-reflection. She saw the boy she had loved, buried under layers of pain, waiting to see if she would give him any hope at all. "I make no promises," she said finally. "But you can come by on Sundays. I have tea in the afternoon, and if you want to sit on my porch and talk, I won't send you away." "That's all I can offer right now." The smile that broke across Cole's face was like sunrise, and Juliette felt something in her chest crack just a little. "That's more than I deserve," he said. "Thank you, Juliette. You won't regret this." "I might," she said. "But I suppose I'll never know unless I try." He left shortly after, and Juliette sat alone in her kitchen, wondering what she had just set in motion. The Texas ranch hands gave her knowing looks when she served breakfast the next morning, but they said nothing, and for that she was grateful. Sunday came, and Cole appeared on her porch at precisely 3 in the afternoon, wearing clean clothes and carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. Juliette invited him to sit, poured tea, and waited. "I brought you something," Cole said, handing her the package. "I don't know if you'll want it, but I've been carrying it for a while now." Juliette unwrapped the paper carefully and found a small wooden box, carved with intricate patterns of flowers and vines. Inside was a pressed wildflower, the same kind that had grown on the hill where they used to watch the sunset, and a folded piece of paper. "I picked that flower the day before I left," Cole said quietly. "I was going to give it to you with a proposal, but then Marcus found me at the livery and offered me his deal, and I convinced myself that I wasn't good enough for you, that I never would be. So I pressed the flower and kept it, a reminder of what a fool I'd been. The paper is a list of every job I've worked since I left, every place I've been, every cent I've saved. I wanted you to see that I've accounted for every day we've been apart." Juliette unfolded the paper and saw pages of neat handwriting, dates and locations and amounts, a meticulous record of 5 years. At the bottom was a number that made her breath catch: $3,000, saved from brutal labor and self-denial. "I don't want your money," she said. "It's not for you," Cole said. "It's for us if there ever is an us again. It's for the future I stole from us, the home we should have built, the life we should have lived. If you never want that with me, I'll give it to the church in your name or to whatever cause you choose. But I wanted you to know that I'm not the broke coward who left you anymore. I'm a man who has something to offer, who has learned the value of work and sacrifice." They sat in silence, sipping tea, and Juliette felt the walls around her heart tremble. It would be so easy to let him back in, to forgive him and pretend the last 5 years had never happened. But she had learned hard lessons about survival and self-reliance, and she was not willing to risk everything on pretty words and pressed flowers. "Tell me about Nevada," she said instead. "Tell me about the mining camp and what you learned there." So Cole talked, and Juliette listened. He told her about the brutal conditions, the men who died in cave-ins and accidents, the desperation that drove people to gamble away their last coins. He told her about hitting bottom, about waking up in the dirt after a 3-day drunk, and realizing that he had become exactly the kind of man he had always feared he was. He told her about the old prospector who had found him, sobered him up, and given him a job hauling equipment for a share of whatever gold they found. His name was Samuel Porter, Cole said. He was 70 years old and had been prospecting for 40 years. Never struck it rich, but he kept at it because he loved the search. He taught me about persistence, about showing up day after day even when everything seems hopeless. When he died, I worked his claim for another 6 months and found enough gold to give him a proper burial and start my savings. I think he would have approved. He sounds like a good man, Juliette said. He was, Cole said. He's the reason I came back. On his deathbed, he told me that a man who runs from his mistakes is a coward, but a man who faces them is a hero in the making. He said I had to go back and make things right, or I'd never have peace. So I did. The afternoon faded into evening, and when Cole finally stood to leave, Juliette felt the loss of his presence like a physical thing. It surprised her, that sudden loneliness, and she realized that despite her anger and hurt, she had enjoyed talking to him. He was different than she remembered, more thoughtful, more measured in his words. The reckless boy was gone, replaced by a man who had seen the darkness in himself and chosen to climb back into the light. "Can I come back next Sunday?" Cole asked. "Yes," Juliette said. "But Cole, I need you to understand something. This isn't me forgiving you. This is me trying to figure out if the man you are now is someone I can trust. That's going to take time." "I have all the time in the world," Cole said. "As long as you're willing to give me a chance, I'll wait." He left, and Juliette went inside, holding the wooden box and wondering what she was doing. Mrs. Chen came by the next day with bread and gossip, and the conversation inevitably turned to Cole. "Everyone's talking about what happened with Marcus," Sarah Chen said. "About what Cole said about Marcus paying him to leave. Do you think it's true?" "I know it's true," Juliette said. "I didn't know the details at the time, but it makes sense. Marcus always wanted me to choose him, and when I wouldn't, he made sure no one else would either." "That boy needs a good thrashing," Sarah said. "His poor father must be mortified. Thomas Grant was telling everyone at the store that he's cutting business ties with the Fleming Bank. Says he won't work with a family that operates like that." "I don't want to cause trouble," Juliette said. "You're not causing anything," Sarah said firmly. "Marcus caused this and Cole is trying to fix it. The question is, what are you going to do about Cole?" "I don't know," Juliette admitted. "Part of me wants to send him away again to protect myself. But another part remembers what we had, what we could have had, and wonders if everyone deserves a second chance." "That's a decision only you can make," Sarah said. "But I'll tell you this. I've seen a lot of men in my life, good and bad. The ones who come back, who face their mistakes and try to make amends, those are the ones worth keeping. The ones who run and never look back, those are the ones you thank the heavens you escaped from." The weeks turned into months, and Cole came every Sunday without fail. They talked about everything and nothing, about the town and the weather and their memories of better times. Slowly, carefully, Juliette began to lower her guard. She saw how Cole interacted with others in town, saw the respect he earned at the Collins Ranch, heard stories of his kindness and work ethic. Daniel Collins told her how Cole had saved a young ranch hand from being trampled by a spooked horse, putting himself in danger without hesitation. Father Rodriguez mentioned that Cole had been attending church regularly and had volunteered to help repair the roof. Even Sheriff Morrison stopped by to say that Cole had helped track down a thief who had stolen from the general store, refusing any reward. "He's making a name for himself," Morrison said. "A good name. Whatever he was 5 years ago, he's not that man anymore." Juliette wanted to believe it. She wanted to trust that Cole had truly changed, that he would not hurt her again. But the scar on her heart was deep, and it would take more than words and actions to fully heal it. December brought cooler weather to San Diego, a relief from the summer heat. Juliette was in the garden behind the boarding house when Cole arrived early one Sunday, his face troubled. "I'm leaving," he said without preamble. "Daniel's father needs someone to drive a herd up to Sacramento, and he asked me to lead the crew. We'll be gone for 6 weeks, maybe 2 months depending on weather and conditions. I wanted you to know before I left so you wouldn't think I'd run again." Juliette felt panic rise in her chest, swift and irrational. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Cole said. "I tried to get out of it, but Robert Collins specifically requested me, and I owe him. He gave me work when I had nothing, and I can't refuse him now." "I understand," Juliette said, forcing her voice to stay calm. "You have obligations, it's fine." It's not fine, Cole said, stepping closer. I can see it in your eyes, Juliette. You think I'm leaving again, that I'm using this as an excuse to run, but I swear to you I'm coming back. I give you my word, on everything I hold sacred, that I will return to San Diego the moment the job is done. You can write to me care of the Collins Ranch and I'll write back. I won't disappear on you again. Words are easy, Juliette said, and hated the tremor in her voice. You gave me words before, Cole. You gave me promises and then you left. Cole took her hands and she let him, feeling the calluses on his palms, the strength in his fingers. Then don't trust my words, he said. Trust my actions. Trust that I've been here every Sunday for 3 months. Trust that I've built a life here, that I've made commitments and friendships. Trust that I'm leaving a piece of my heart with you, and I'll move heaven and earth to get back to it. Juliette looked into his eyes and saw desperation there, a need for her to believe him that went bone deep. I'm afraid, she whispered. I'm afraid that if you leave, you'll realize you don't need to come back, that whatever you feel for me will fade with distance and I'll be alone again. Never, Cole said fiercely. Juliette, I love you. I've loved you since we were young and stupid, and I'll love you when we're old and gray. Distance doesn't change that. Nothing changes that. I was an idiot to leave you before, but I'm not leaving you now. I'm leaving to do a job, and then I'm coming back to the woman I love, to the life I want to build with her if she'll have me. Don't, Juliette said, pulling her hands away. Don't ask me that question yet. You're not ready and neither am I. Go to Sacramento. Do your job. Come back safely. Then we'll talk about the future. Cole nodded, though she could see disappointment in his face. All right, he said. I'll come back and we'll talk. But Juliette, I want you to know something. Whether you choose me or not, whether you forgive me or not, you've made me a better man. Knowing you, loving you, trying to be worthy of you, that's changed me in ways I can't even explain. So thank you for giving me these Sundays, for talking to me, for not shutting me out completely. Whatever happens, I'm grateful. He left, and Juliette went back to her garden, tears streaming down her face. She pulled weeds with vicious intensity, trying to channel her fear and frustration into something productive. Mrs. Chen found her there an hour later, dirt under her nails and eyes red from crying. He's leaving, Juliette said. Cole's leaving tomorrow, and I'm terrified he won't come back. Oh, honey, Sarah said, kneeling beside her in the dirt. That man is coming back. I'd stake my store on it. You should have seen his face when he was telling people about the cattle drive. He looked like it was a death sentence, not an opportunity. That's not a man planning to run. That's a man who's already homesick for someone he hasn't even left yet. How do I do this? Juliette asked. How do I trust him again? One day at a time, Sarah said. You let him go, you wait, and you see what he does. If he comes back, if he keeps his word, then you'll know. And if he doesn't, then you'll know that too, and you can finally close that chapter of your life. Either way, you'll have your answer. The next morning, Juliette woke before dawn and walked to the edge of town where the cattle drive was assembling. She stayed back, not wanting Cole to see her, but needing to watch him leave. She saw him organizing the men, checking supplies, and speaking with Robert Collins. He looked competent and confident, every inch the leader he had been chosen to be. Just before he mounted his horse, Cole turned and looked directly at her hiding spot, as if he had known she was there all along. He touched his hat in a small salute, and then he was gone, riding north with the herd and his crew, disappearing into the California dawn. Juliette went back to the boarding house and threw herself into work. She cleaned rooms until they gleamed, took on extra laundry, and volunteered to help Mrs. Chen with inventory at the store. Anything to keep her mind off the fact that Cole was gone and she was counting the days until he returned. 2 weeks after he left, a letter arrived. It was short, written on cheap paper with a dull pencil, but Juliette treasured every word. Juliette, we made good time to Fresno and the herd is healthy. Weather is holding and the men are in good spirits. I think about you every morning when I wake and every night before I sleep. I think about your laugh, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, the sound of your voice. I'm counting the days until I can see you again. Yours always, Cole. She wrote back that same day, telling him about the boarding house, about Christmas preparations in town, about the new family that had moved in and opened a bakery. She kept her letter light, friendly, not wanting to reveal how much his words had affected her. More letters came, one every week like clockwork, sent from different towns along the route. Cole wrote about the challenges of the drive, the beauty of the California landscape, the men he worked with. He wrote about missing her, about remembering their time together, about hoping she was well. Juliette found herself waiting for the mail with an eagerness that surprised her. She kept his letters in the wooden box he had carved, reading them over when she felt doubt creeping in. Mrs. Chen teased her gently about becoming moony-eyed, and Juliette could not deny it. I think I'm falling in love with him again, she confessed to Sarah one January afternoon. Or maybe I never stopped loving him and I'm just finally admitting it. That's wonderful, Sarah said. Terrifying but wonderful. What are you going to do when he gets back? I don't know, Juliette said. Listen to what he has to say, I suppose. See if the man in the letters matches the man who stands in front of me. Figure out if I'm brave enough to risk my heart again. You're the bravest woman I know, Sarah said. You survived loss and gossip and built a life from nothing. If you can do that, you can certainly handle one repentant cowboy. February came, cold and wet, and Juliette began to worry. The letters had stopped 3 weeks earlier, and she heard nothing from Cole or the Collins ranch. She told herself that mail was unreliable, that the weather could delay everything, but fear gnawed at her constantly. Then on a gray morning in late February, Daniel Collins came to her door, his face serious. Juliette's heart stopped. Is he dead? She asked before Daniel could speak. What? No, Daniel said quickly. No, Juliette, Cole's fine. I'm sorry, I should have led with that. He's on his way back now, should be here by tomorrow. I came to tell you that he got injured during the drive, nothing life-threatening, but he didn't want you to hear about it from someone else and worry. What happened? Juliette asked, relief and fear warring in her chest. Stampede, Daniel said. A mountain lion spooked the herd about 3 weeks out from Sacramento. Cole got thrown from his horse and broke some ribs, took a hoof to the leg. He insisted on finishing the drive rather than staying in Sacramento to heal, said he had to get back to San Diego. My father's not happy about it, says Cole should have rested, but you know how stubborn he can be. I do, Juliette said faintly. Thank you for telling me, Daniel. She spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous anticipation, cleaning things that were already clean, cooking food no one had ordered. The Texas ranch hands had left in December, and the boarding house was quiet, which only made her more aware of her own racing thoughts. The next afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, she saw a rider coming down the main street, moving slowly. She recognized Cole's horse immediately and was out the door before she could stop herself. Cole dismounted carefully, favoring his left leg, and she could see the pain in his face despite his attempt to hide it. His chest was bound tight under his shirt, and there were new lines around his eyes that spoke of recent suffering. You're hurt, Juliette said, reaching him in seconds. You should be in bed, not riding for days. What were you thinking? I was thinking I had a promise to keep, Cole said, and his voice was rough with exhaustion. I told you I'd come back, and I came back. I'm sorry about the letters stopping. There was no mail service where we were after the stampede, and I couldn't get word to you. You idiot, Juliette said, but her hands were gentle as she steadied him. "Come inside. You need rest and food and medical attention in that order." "I need to see you," Cole said. "I need to look at your face and hear your voice and know that I made it back. Then I'll do whatever you say." Juliette helped him into the boarding house, settled him in the kitchen chair where she had stitched his face months before, and began examining his injuries. The ribs were healing but still tender, and the bruise on his leg was spectacular, a mottled purple and yellow that made her wince. "You should see a doctor," she said. "I saw one in Sacramento," Cole said. "He wrapped the ribs and said the leg would heal on its own, just needed time." "I'm fine, Juliette. I've had worse." "That doesn't make me feel better," she said. She prepared a plate of food, the stew she had made that afternoon, and watched him eat with the intensity of a man who had been living on trail rations for too long. "Tell me about the stampede." So Cole told her, his voice steady despite the pain. He described the mountain lion, the chaos as the cattle scattered, the desperate race to turn the herd before they ran off a cliff. He told her about his horse stumbling, about hitting the ground hard and feeling his ribs crack, about the hoof that caught his leg as he rolled away. "I thought about you," he said, "while I was lying there in the dirt, wondering if I was going to get trampled. I thought about how angry you'd be if I died after promising to come back, and it made me laugh, which hurt like hell. But it also made me fight harder to get up, to get out of the way. I wasn't going to break my promise to you, not even for death." "Don't joke about that," Juliette said, but her voice was thick with emotion. "Don't make light of almost dying." "I'm not making light of anything," Cole said. "I'm telling you the truth. You're what kept me alive out there, Juliette. The thought of you, the hope of a future with you, that's what made me keep going when every breath hurt and every step was agony. I love you, and I'm not afraid to say it anymore. I'm not afraid of anything anymore except losing you again." Juliette sat down across from him, her hands shaking. "I read your letters," she said. "Every single one, multiple times. I kept them in the box you carved for me, and I read them when I missed you, which was more often than I want to admit. I think somewhere during those 2 months, I stopped being angry and started remembering why I loved you in the first place." "Does that mean you forgive me?" Cole asked, and his voice was hopeful and terrified all at once. "It means I'm ready to try," Juliette said. "I'm ready to see if we can build something new from the ashes of what we had. But Cole, you have to understand that I'm different now. I'm not the naive girl who believed in easy promises. I'm a woman who has survived loss and gossip and loneliness, and I need a partner who will stand beside me, not someone who will run when things get hard." "I'm not running," Cole said. He reached across the table and took her hand, his grip firm despite his exhaustion. "I'm standing right here, broken ribs and all, and I'm telling you that I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm the man you deserve. I want to marry you, Juliette. I want to build a home with you, raise children with you, grow old watching the sunset over the ocean like we used to. I want everything we should have had 5 years ago, and I want to spend every day making up for the time we lost." Juliette felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "You're proposing to me while you can barely stand." "I proposed to you the first time on my knees," Cole said. "Seems fitting that I do it again in rough shape. At least this time I'm staying for your answer instead of running away like a coward." "Yes," Juliette said, the word bursting from her like a dam breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you, Cole Yates. But if you ever break my heart again, I'll hunt you down and make you wish you'd stayed in Nevada." Cole laughed, then winced as his ribs protested. "Noted," he said, "but it won't come to that. I'm never letting you go again, Juliette. You're stuck with me for better or worse, and I promise the better is going to far outweigh the worse." They sat in the kitchen, holding hands across the table, and Juliette felt peace settle over her for the first time in 5 years. It was not the naive happiness of youth, but something deeper and more enduring. It was the peace of two people who had been broken and had chosen to heal together, who had faced their mistakes and emerged stronger. "When do you want to get married?" Cole asked. "Not until you're healed," Juliette said firmly. "I won't have you collapsing at the altar. Besides, I need time to plan, and you need time to find us a home. This boarding house is my business, but it's not where I want to raise a family." "I've been saving for a place," Cole said. "That money I showed you, I've added to it. Between the cattle drive wages and what I had before, I have enough for a small ranch outside town. Nothing fancy, but good land, room to grow. If you want it, that is." "I want it," Juliette said. "I want everything, Cole. The home, the future, the children. I want the life we should have had, and I want to build it with you." The next weeks were a blur of planning and preparation. Cole recovered slowly, his ribs healing enough that he could move without wincing, his leg regaining strength. He spent his days looking at properties with Robert Collins, who had offered to help him find the right land, and his evenings with Juliette, talking about their future. They settled on a small ranch 5 miles outside San Diego, with a sturdy house that needed work but had good bones, a barn for horses, and a stream running through the property. Cole used his savings as a down payment and took a loan for the rest, promising to pay it back with work and determination. "We'll make it beautiful," Juliette said, standing in the empty house and envisioning what it could become. "We'll fix it up together, make it a home." "As long as you're in it, it's already beautiful," Cole said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They married in April, in the small church where Father Rodriguez had baptized them both as children. The ceremony was simple, attended by their friends and the people who had watched their story unfold. Mrs. Chen cried through the entire service, and Daniel Collins stood as Cole's best man, grinning broadly. When Cole kissed his bride, the church erupted in applause, and Juliette felt joy so complete it almost frightened her. This was what she had dreamed of 5 years ago, but it was better for being earned through pain and perseverance. It was sweeter for knowing what they had overcome. They moved into the ranch the next day, spending their first night in a house that was theirs, lying on a mattress on the floor because they had not yet bought furniture. Cole held Juliette close, his hands gentle on her skin, and they made love with the tenderness of people who had been given a second chance and were determined not to waste it. "I love you," Cole whispered into her hair. "I'll love you every day for the rest of my life, and I'll work every day to deserve you." "You already do," Juliette said. "You came back. You faced what you'd done and tried to make it right. That's all I ever needed, Cole, for you to be brave enough to stay." The months that followed were filled with hard work and harder-won happiness. They fixed up the ranch together, Cole repairing fences and buildings while Juliette planted a garden and made the house a home. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the Pacific, just as they had dreamed of doing years before. Juliette kept the boarding house, hiring a manager to run it while she focused on the ranch. The income from both ventures allowed them to live comfortably, and Cole's skill with horses meant he had steady work from neighboring ranches. They were not rich, but they were secure, and that was more than enough. In December, 9 months after their wedding, Juliette discovered she was pregnant. She told Cole over dinner, watching his face transform from confusion to wonder to pure joy. "A baby," he said, his voice awed. "We're going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Juliette asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Cole said. He knelt beside her chair and placed his hands on her still flat stomach. "Thank you, Juliette. Thank you for giving me this chance, for building this life with me. I promise I'll be the best father I can be." "I know you will," Juliette said, running her fingers through his hair. "You'll teach our child about courage and redemption, about facing your mistakes and growing from them. You'll be wonderful." Their son was born in August of 1879, a healthy boy with Cole's eyes and Juliette's stubborn chin. They named him Samuel, after the prospector who had helped Cole find his way back to himself, and Porter for a middle name. Cole held his son with the reverence of a man holding the most precious thing in the world, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, Samuel," he whispered. "I'm your father, and I'm going to love you every day of your life. I'm going to be here for every moment, every milestone, every time you need me. That's a promise." Juliette watched her husband cradle their child and felt her heart swell. This was the man Cole had become, the father he would be, and she knew without doubt that he would keep his promise. He had spent 5 years learning the meaning of commitment, and he would not forget those lessons now. The years passed in a rhythm of work and love and growing family. Samuel was followed by a daughter, Lily, 2 years later, and then another son, Thomas, 3 years after that. The ranch prospered, the horses Cole trained earning a reputation throughout California. Juliette's boarding house remained successful, providing income and allowing her to maintain her independence. But more than success or prosperity, they had each other. They had the love that had survived betrayal and absence, that had been tested and refined until it was unbreakable. On their 10th anniversary, they stood on the same hill where Cole had once picked a wildflower and planned a proposal he had not had the courage to give. "You remember what you said when you came back?" Juliette asked, holding Cole's hand. "About kneeling in my doorway." "I remember every word I've ever said to you," Cole replied, "especially the ones I regret and the ones that brought you back to me." "I was so angry that day," Juliette said, "so hurt and scared, but I'm glad you came back, Cole. I'm glad you were brave enough to face what you'd done, because look what we've built. Look at our children, our home, our life. We wouldn't have any of this if you hadn't come back." "I would have come back eventually," Cole said. "Even if it took me 20 years, even if you had married someone else, I would have come back just to know you were happy. But I'm grateful every day that I found my courage when I did, that I didn't waste more time. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Juliette, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." They watched the sunset together, their children playing in the grass below, and Juliette thought about the girl she had been and the woman she had become. That girl would not have survived the heartbreak of Cole's leaving, would have been destroyed by the gossip and loss. But she had not been destroyed. She had grown stronger, had built a life on her own terms, and when Cole had returned, she had been ready to face him as an equal. That was the real gift of their story, she realized. Not the fairy tale ending, but the growth they had both achieved. Cole had learned courage and self-worth, had transformed from a boy who ran from challenges into a man who faced them head-on. And she had learned resilience and independence, had discovered that she could survive anything life threw at her. Together, they were better than they had been apart. Together, they were whole. "I love you," she said, the words as true as they had been the first time she spoke them, but deeper now, richer with the weight of years and experience. "I love you too," Cole said, pulling her close. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after, that's a promise I'll never break again." Years continued to pass, each one adding its own stories and memories to their growing family. Samuel grew into a thoughtful young man who shared his father's way with horses. At 15, he could gentle even the most skittish mare, speaking to them in low tones that seemed to reach some understanding between human and animal. Lily was fierce and independent, helping her mother run the boarding house and learning the business with sharp attention. Thomas, the youngest, was the dreamer, always climbing trees to watch birds or lying in the grass studying clouds. Cole proved himself true to every promise he had made. He was present for every childhood illness, every scraped knee, every nightmare. He taught his children to ride and rope, to work hard and treat others with respect. But more than that, he taught them about redemption through his own example, telling them honestly about his mistakes when they were old enough to understand. "I was not always the man I am now," he told Samuel one evening when his eldest son was 16. They were mending fences together, the work rhythmic and familiar. "I made a terrible choice once, hurt someone I loved because I was afraid and weak. Your mother had every right to turn me away when I came back, but she gave me a chance to prove I had changed. That's a gift I've never taken for granted." "Is that why you're always so careful with her feelings?" Samuel asked. "Why you never yell, never storm off when you're angry?" "Partly," Cole admitted. "But mostly it's because I know what it's like to lose her, and I never want to feel that way again. Your mother is the strongest person I know, Samuel. She survived things that would have broken most people, and she did it with grace and courage. The least I can do is treat her with the love and respect she deserves." Samuel absorbed this, his young face thoughtful. "I hope I find someone like that someday," he said. "Someone worth fighting for, worth being better for." "You will," Cole assured him. "And when you do, remember what I've taught you. Be brave enough to stay when things get hard. Be honest enough to admit when you're wrong. Be humble enough to ask for forgiveness. Those are the things that make a good man and a good husband." The ranch continued to thrive. Cole's reputation as a horse trainer brought customers from as far as Los Angeles and San Francisco. He developed a method that was gentle but firm, earning the trust of animals that others had given up on. Men would bring their problem horses to the Yates ranch and leave with well-trained mounts, spreading word of Cole's skill. Juliette expanded the boarding house, buying the property next door and adding 6 more rooms. She hired local women to help with the work, creating jobs in the community and earning respect as a fair employer. The boarding house became known as the best lodging in San Diego, clean and comfortable with excellent food. But despite their success, they never forgot where they had come from. Every year on the anniversary of the day Cole had come back, they donated money to the church in memory of Juliette's parents. They helped young couples getting started, remembering how difficult those early years could be. When drought hit the region in 1883, they opened their home to neighbors who had lost crops, sharing what they had and asking nothing in return. Mrs. Chen remained a close friend, her store thriving alongside their ranch. She watched their children grow with the pride of an honorary grandmother, always ready with candy for the little ones and wise advice for the older ones. On Sunday afternoons, she would join them for tea, and the 3 of them would sit on the porch, talking and laughing like they had all the time in the world. "You two give me hope," Sarah said one such afternoon, when the children were occupied elsewhere. "In a world that can be so hard, so cruel sometimes, you're proof that love can win, that people can change, can become better than they were." "We're not perfect," Juliette said. "We still argue sometimes, still have hard days. But you work through them," Sarah pointed out. "That's what matters. You don't run from problems, you face them together. That's real love, the kind that lasts." Cole reached over and took Juliette's hand, a gesture so natural after years together that he probably did not even realize he was doing it. "I learned from the best," he said. "Juliette taught me what real strength looks like, what real courage means. Everything good in my life I owe to her." "Stop," Juliette said, but she was smiling. "You give me too much credit. You did the hard work, Cole. You changed yourself, faced your demons. I just gave you a chance. You gave me everything, Cole said softly. They grew older together, watching their children become adults with lives of their own. Samuel married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, a sensible woman named Elizabeth who shared his love of horses. They built a house on the edge of the Yates property, staying close to family while creating their own space. Lily shocked everyone by refusing multiple marriage proposals, declaring that she wanted to run the boarding house and did not need a husband to feel complete. At 23, she bought the business outright from her mother, using money she had saved and borrowed, and proceeded to expand it even further. Juliette was so proud she cried. Thomas, the dreamer, became a teacher, opening a small school in San Diego for children whose parents could not afford private education. He had inherited his father's patience and his mother's determination, and he used both to great effect in shaping young minds. By the time Cole and Juliette celebrated their 20th anniversary in 1898, they had 4 grandchildren and another on the way. They had built a legacy not just in property and success, but in the example they set for their family and community. On the evening of their anniversary, after the family gathering had ended and the grandchildren had been taken home, Cole and Juliette sat alone on their porch. The same porch where they had spent countless evenings, watching sunsets and talking about everything and nothing. Cole's hair was gray now, his face lined from years of sun and work, but Juliette thought he had never looked more handsome. 20 years, she said, marveling at how quickly time had passed. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you showed up on my doorstep, and sometimes it feels like we've been together forever. Both are true, Cole said. Every day with you feels new and exciting, but also comfortable and right, like coming home. That's the magic of us, Juliette. We're always discovering each other, always growing, but we're also solid and steady. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come back? Juliette asked. It was a question she had never voiced before, but after 20 years, she felt safe asking it. Cole was quiet for a long moment, his hand tightening on hers. Every day, he admitted. I think about the life I would have missed, the children I wouldn't have raised, the woman I wouldn't have loved. I think about dying alone somewhere, bitter and broken, wondering what might have been. Coming back to you was the bravest thing I ever did, Juliette, but it was also the easiest decision I ever made, because the alternative was unthinkable. I'm glad you came back, Juliette said. Not just for me, but for you. You deserved the chance to become the man you are now, to have this life, this family. We both deserved our happy ending. And we got it, Cole said. He pulled her close and they sat together as the stars came out overhead. We got everything we ever wanted and more. I couldn't ask for anything better than this, than you, than the life we've built together. The years continued their steady march. Samuel and Elizabeth had 3 children, all of whom showed promise with horses and ranching. Lily eventually did marry, at 31, to a banker from Los Angeles who had stayed at her boarding house and fallen in love with her sharp mind and independent spirit. Thomas married his fellow teacher, a woman named Margaret who shared his passion for education and social justice. Cole and Juliette settled into the comfortable rhythm of grandparents, enjoying their grandchildren without the full weight of responsibility. They traveled a bit, taking trips up the coast to see the changing California landscape, visiting San Francisco and Sacramento. But they always came back to their ranch, to the home they had built together. In 1905, on a warm September day much like the one when Cole had first returned, they celebrated their 27th anniversary. The family gathered at the ranch, 3 generations of Yates filling the house and yard with noise and laughter. Cole stood on the porch and looked out at his children and grandchildren, at the legacy he and Juliette had created, and felt overwhelming gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Juliette asked, coming to stand beside him. She was 51 now, her hair streaked with silver, her face bearing the lines of a life well lived. To Cole, she was as beautiful as the day he had first fallen in love with her. "I'm thinking about how blessed I am," Cole said. "How one decision, one moment of courage gave me all of this. I'm thinking about the boy I was, who ran away from the best thing that ever happened to him, and how grateful I am that I found my way back." "We found our way back to each other," Juliette corrected. "I had to be brave too, Cole. I had to be willing to forgive, to risk my heart again. We both had to choose this every day for 27 years. And I'd choose it for 27 more," Cole said, "for 57 more. For however long we have, Juliette, I'm choosing you, choosing us, choosing this beautiful life we've made." That evening, after the family had gone and the house was quiet, Cole took Juliette's hand and led her out to the hill where they had once watched sunsets as young lovers. The same hill where he had picked a wildflower and planned a proposal he did not have the courage to give. The same hill where, 10 years into their marriage, they had stood and marveled at how far they had come. Now, 27 years into their marriage, they stood there again. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" Juliette asked. "We were so young, so sure we had everything figured out." "We didn't know anything," Cole said with a laugh. "We had no idea how hard life could be, how much it would test us. But we learned, didn't we? We learned and grew and became the people we needed to be." "We did," Juliette agreed. She leaned her head on his shoulder, fitting against him as perfectly as she always had. "And I wouldn't change a thing. Not the heartbreak, not the years apart, not the struggle. It all led us here to this moment, and I'm grateful for every step of the journey." They watched the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and orange. The same sun that had set on their youth, on their separation, on their reunion, on every day of their marriage. It was constant and beautiful, a reminder that some things endured no matter what storms came. "I love you, Juliette Yates," Cole said. "I loved you when we were young and foolish. I loved you when I was too cowardly to deserve you. I loved you when I came back and knelt in your doorway, begging for a chance. And I love you now with every breath in my body, with every beat of my heart. You are my past, my present, and my future. You are everything." "I love you too," Juliette said, tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears that spoke of a life fully lived and deeply cherished. "Thank you for coming back, Cole. Thank you for being brave enough to face what you'd done and strong enough to become someone new. Thank you for every day, every moment, every memory we've made together." They stood together on that hill. Two people who had been broken and had chosen to heal, who had made mistakes and had learned from them, who had loved and lost and loved again. Around them, the California evening wrapped them in warmth and peace, and below them, the ranch they had built together stood as testament to what two people could create when they chose courage over fear, forgiveness over bitterness, love over hurt. Their story had started with betrayal and heartbreak, but it had become something beautiful. It had become a testament to the power of second chances, to the possibility of redemption, to the enduring strength of true love. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its final golden light over the land they called home, Cole and Juliette Yates knew that they had found what everyone searches for and few achieve. A love that lasts, a partnership that sustains, a happiness that endures. They had found their forever, and it was more beautiful than any sunset. The seasons continued to turn, bringing with them the full circle of life. In 1908, When Cole was 55 and Juliette 54, they welcomed their 10th grandchild, a beautiful girl Samuel and Elizabeth named Juliette after her grandmother. The elder Juliette cried when she held her tiny namesake, feeling the weight of legacy and love in her arms. "She looks like you," Cole said, his arm around his wife's shoulders as they gazed at the baby. "Same determined chin, same intelligent eyes. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with, just like her grandmother." "I hope she has an easier path than I did," Juliette said softly. "I hope the world is kinder to her, more accepting of strong women who know their own minds." "It will be," Cole assured her. "Because of women like you, women like our Lily, who refuse to be limited by what society expects. You're changing the world, Juliette, one brave choice at a time." Their children continued to thrive, building lives that made Cole and Juliette proud. Samuel expanded the horse training business, developing methods his father had pioneered and adding his own innovations. The Yates Ranch became known throughout California as the place to bring difficult horses, and Samuel trained apprentices who spread their techniques even further. Lily's boarding house became an institution in San Diego, famous for its hospitality and her shrewd business sense. She employed over a dozen people by 1910, providing good wages and fair treatment that set a standard other businesses tried to match. Her husband supported her work completely, managing the financial side while Lily handled operations and customer relations. Thomas's school grew from a single room to a full building, funded by donations from grateful parents and community supporters. He taught not just reading and arithmetic, but critical thinking and social responsibility, encouraging his students to question injustice and work for positive change. By 1910, several of his former students had gone on to college, breaking barriers in their families and communities. Cole and Juliette watched their legacy unfold with quiet satisfaction. They had not just built a family, they had built a foundation for future generations to stand upon. Their story of forgiveness and second chances had become part of family lore, told to children and grandchildren as an example of what love could overcome. In 1913, as they approached their 35th anniversary, Cole began to slow down. His body, worn from years of hard ranch work and that long-ago injury during the cattle drive, started to remind him of his age. He could no longer break horses the way he once had, could no longer work from dawn to dusk without feeling it in his bones. But he could still sit on the porch with Juliette every evening, still hold her hand and talk about their day, still marvel at the life they had built together. And that, he decided, was more than enough. "I'm getting old," he said one evening, a note of surprise in his voice as if he had not quite believed it would happen. "We're getting old together," Juliette corrected. Her own body bore the marks of time, her hands arthritic from years of cooking and cleaning, her vision requiring spectacles now for close work. "That's the blessing of it, Cole. We get to age together, to face this final chapter as partners just like we've faced everything else." "I'm not ready to leave you," Cole said quietly. "I know that day will come eventually for one of us, but I'm not ready. I want more time, more sunsets, more mornings waking up beside you." "Then we'll take what time we have and fill it with love," Juliette said. "However many days we get, we'll make them count. That's all anyone can do, really. Live fully in the time we're given." They did exactly that. They traveled less but savored their home more. They spent long afternoons with grandchildren, telling stories and passing down family history. They attended every school performance, every family dinner, every celebration, soaking in the joy of being surrounded by people they loved. On their 35th anniversary in May of 1913, the family threw them a massive celebration at the ranch. All three children were there with their spouses and children, along with extended family and friends from throughout San Diego. Mrs. Chen, now 84 and still sharp as ever, made the journey from her home in town, bringing stories and laughter. 35 years, Sarah marveled, sitting with Cole and Juliette in the shade while the party swirled around them. And you two still look at each other like newlyweds. How do you do it? We remember, Juliette said simply. We remember what it cost to get here, what we almost lost, what we fought to build. We don't take a single day for granted. And we keep choosing each other, Cole added. Every day we wake up and choose love over resentment, forgiveness over grudges, partnership over independence. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. You two are my favorite love story, Sarah said, her eyes misty. I've known a lot of couples in my 84 years, but none that inspire me the way you do. You prove that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define you, that love really can conquer all if you're willing to work for it. As the sun began to set, Cole stood and offered his hand to Juliette. Dance with me, he asked, even though there was no music, even though his joints ached and her feet hurt. Always, Juliette said, taking his hand. They danced slowly on the grass, surrounded by their family, moving to a rhythm only they could hear. It was the dance of 35 years together, of shared joys and weathered sorrows, of ordinary days and extraordinary moments. It was the dance of a love that had survived betrayal and absence, that had been tested and proven true. Their children watched with smiles, their grandchildren with wonder, and their friends with tears, because everyone there understood that they were witnessing something rare and precious. A love that had endured, that had transformed two people and changed the trajectory of countless lives. When the dance ended, Cole pulled Juliette close and whispered in her ear, words meant only for her. Thank you for taking me back. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for every day, every moment, every breath we've shared. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'll love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. And I'll love you just as long, Juliette whispered back. Forever, Cole, that's our promise. Forever. The years that followed were gentler, quieter, filled with the peaceful satisfaction of a life well lived. Cole and Juliette handed over more responsibility to their children, trusting them to carry on what had been built. They spent their days in comfortable routine, tending their garden, entertaining visitors, doting on grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. In the spring of 1918, Cole fell ill. It started as a simple cold, but developed into pneumonia that his aging body struggled to fight. Juliette nursed him tirelessly, sitting by his bedside day and night, refusing to leave his side. You should rest, Cole told her, his voice weak. I'm not going anywhere yet. I know you're not, Juliette said firmly. Because you promised me forever, Cole Yates, and I'm holding you to that. He recovered, slowly and with difficulty, but he recovered. By summer he was back on his feet, weaker than before but alive. Juliette had been right. He was not done yet. There were still sunsets to watch, still hands to hold, still love to share. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1918, a quieter affair than the 35th, but no less meaningful. Their children gathered with their families, 4 generations of Yates filling the ranch house with warmth and laughter. Cole and Juliette sat in the place of honor, holding hands and watching their legacy unfold before them. 40 years, Cole said wonderingly. 40 years since I knelt in your doorway and begged for a second chance. Best decision you ever made, giving me that chance. Second best, Juliette corrected with a smile. The best decision I ever made was falling in love with you in the first place. Everything else just followed from that. That night, As they prepared for bed in the room they had shared for 4 decades, Cole helped Juliette with the buttons on her dress the way he had done thousands of times before. His hands were slower now, less steady, but still gentle and reverent. "I need to tell you something," he said softly. "I need you to know that if I had to do it all over again, every moment, every mistake, every heartbreak, I would. Because it all led me to you, to this life, to this moment. You made me a better man, Juliette. You gave me a reason to change, to grow, to become someone worthy of your love. I hope you know that." "I know," Juliette said, turning to face him. She cupped his weathered face in her hands, looking into eyes that had seen so much life, so much love. "And I hope you know that you gave me just as much. You taught me about forgiveness, about second chances, about the strength it takes to admit you're wrong, and the courage it takes to change. We made each other better, Cole. That's the gift of true partnership." They held each other in the darkness. Two people who had found their way through betrayal and pain to something beautiful and enduring. Two people who had chosen love over and over again, through easy times and hard, through joy and sorrow, through every challenge life had thrown their way. As Cole drifted off to sleep, Juliette stayed awake a while longer, listening to his breathing, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her. She thought about the girl she had been, heartbroken and alone, facing an uncertain future. She thought about the woman she had become, strong and loved, surrounded by family and legacy. Most of all, she thought about the man sleeping beside her, the cowboy who had wronged her and ridden away, who had found the courage to come back and kneel in her doorway, who had spent 40 years proving that people can change, that mistakes can be overcome, that love can triumph. She thought about all of this, and she smiled in the darkness, grateful beyond words for the life they had built, for the love they had found, for the second chance they had been given and had made the most of. Outside, the California stars shone bright over the ranch, over the land they had tended, over the home they had built, over the love that would endure long after they were gone, carried on in the hearts and lives of their children and grandchildren and all the generations to come. Their story was not just about a cowboy who came back or a woman who forgave. It was about redemption and grace, about courage and perseverance, about the transformative power of love when given the chance to grow. It was about forever, and the promise that, when you find the right person, when you're willing to fight for them and work for them and choose them every single day, forever is exactly what you get. And as Juliette finally closed her eyes and let sleep claim her, wrapped in the arms of the man she loved, she knew with absolute certainty that their forever was the most beautiful thing she had ever known.